In 6 years, the Premier League has changed quite a bit. Managers you know are likely gone, and the teams have shuffled, one of those being us somehow. With a relegation expected before our highest ever budget was spent, what could we do to make this group of lads compete in the Premier League?
They ain't believe in us.
The loans we had were great. Unfortunately, only one was able to stay, as Ashley Phillips became our record transfer. 18 million if we avoid the drop, in which we hope to pay. Edward Plettings would join him as his defensive partner, but with the lack of fullbacks, what should I do? Buy players that can play in those roles? No. Get in midfielders and train them there, as I did with Joe Moulin from Willem II, as well as Dario Isugo to each play their respective flank. I needed another right-sided player, so Sandro Maldonado arrived from Barcelona, Ecuador, Barcelona. And he has to learn the position too. With Tom Bayliss getting into his 30s, I brought Martin Yanchev to train under his tutelage. Then, with a lack of attacking depth, I loaned in Adiele Eriugo from Porto on deadline day. Finally, for 4.1 million, Adam Olale transferred from Fulham. An absolute steal. I once tried to sign him years ago and failed. This time, I couldn't miss out. Of course, we have to say goodbye to those who helped us to this point. That's especially true with the icon Joe Hugo, who couldn't find a club for the rest of the year. Good news! Dane Scarlett finally left on a free. This damn guy earned over 80k for 2 weeks prior to his release because of his contract clause. Good riddance. All of that still had us slated for the championship. That led to opening day versus Manchester United. We faced them once prior. Now, the Red Devils were a side who didn't even qualify for Europe, although they somehow made the Champions League final. With Frank Lampard as manager, their attack seems scary with not Bruno Fernandes up top, plus Rashford, who's considered a legendary winger, but surely that's due to winning a World Cup, rather than his club achievements. On the right flank, Vorek was a guy who made my jaw drop. They also started Frank's son. Regardless, the start of our campaign began, and as I was setting up the music to play from the bench, I looked over and we scored our first shot in the Premier League, which may be a record, and I didn't even see it with my own eyes. While I have to thank their keeper for the empty net, United responded swiftly with a cross of their own, as the legendary winger beat Isugo to it. Then, prior to the half, Mickey Mount found Fernandes in behind, and he made no mistake. It looked like we'd been in deficit at recess, but instead, we attacked them, and our English winger Ola Kigbe will be brought down for a penalty. Our South Korean Heo, whose name is apparently pronounced as Ho, would level it. A thrilling first 45, but could we continue it?
Why not? Everyone else is doing it.
We nearly conceded a pen, but it seemed that VAR became competent by 2029, as the decision was overruled. That was contrasted with the 74th minute, where Olale was tackled, and this wasn't overturned. I suppose Prem refs are the best refs. With the Englishman stepping up, a huge shock was on the cards. Can he grab a brace? Olale, Olale, Olale! Wow. We'd concede a minute after and lose. Genuinely heartbreaking, and that was a vibe to open the season. The second match was with Brighton. With them losing to Derby a week ago, they would go down 2-0 thanks to Olale. Then, bad luck occurred in the 73rd, as a lot was happening, and unfortunately, a rebound ended at Wahi's foot. A couple minutes later, Brighton got back into our box, and with the smallest of spaces, Ellertson brilliantly equalized. A huge disappointment to bottle a 2-goal lead. Following what seemed like a comfortable winning position versus Norwich was lost 19 seconds into the half. Moving into the 72nd, Norwich had a corner, and the delivery was terribly cleared as Sargent smacked his shot off Adinger's noggin for the winner. I don't know what it is with this time of the game. What easily could have been 9 points turned out to be a 9th of that. Southampton once again became a respectable Premier League club. To begin the campaign, they defeated both of our promotion buddies and were aiming for the trifecta. We can't let that happen, and did something we were averse to: defending. We were limiting their chances, and in the second half, a free kick was earned. Ben Knight delivered, and Kim Min-ho nodded it in. Crewe Alexandra had finally won their first Premier League match. This was a feeling we couldn't lose, but versus Brentford, we were. Substitutions were necessary, and that included Max Woodcock. Olale was found behind, and he'd link up with a wide open Woodcock. He joined names like Billy Sharp, Gary Hooper, Steve Finnan, and others to score in each of the top 4 levels of the English pyramid. That was also his only tally. A draw would be sufficient, but we kept going. And in the final moments, Crespo made him. Crespo! 94th minute winner from the man from Portugal. I just threw him to left wing, and he delivered. With 2 victories in a row, how many more can we get? Granted, we did defeat Nottingham Forest comfortably and drew Tottenham thanks to Ola Kigbe's late equalizer. However, 5 losses plus a draw to Villa where we balled a 2-goal lead, providing additional pain. Barely sitting outside the relegation zone, we faced Blackburn, who were tied with the same points and goal difference. At home, we should be able to handle them, plus they were defeated 8-2 last time. Unfortunately, Ho Young-min didn't score 5. He got 1, but that was after Blackburn's opener. The poor form was impacting us on the pitch, and from a corner kick, the Rovers found a bit of luck to grab the lead as they got their revenge. Tommy Wheeldon Jr. was doing brilliant work, and I was surprised to learn his previous jobs were in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Crystal Palace was going terribly. 2-0 just past a half hour. We needed luck, and Aaron Hickey provided that by getting sent off. Facing 10 men in the final 45 was challenging, but once Joe Reed opened his account in the 70th, the floodgates surged. 6 minutes later, Palace would flub it up, and less than 90 seconds later, Knight would tap home the winner. All of that only to host Derby County at home and lose. By the way, guess what happened during the game? Klassen got injured! How many times, man? And I'm a complete fool because I didn't learn from last time. No keeper on the bench, meaning Plentings had to deputize. The Norwegian would be out for nearly 2 months, meaning Tom Booth joins Woodcock in the League 2 to Premier League glory. You at least love to see that, especially since he kept a clean sheet on his debut, as Plentings played his correct position and scored. Unfortunately, Booth showed his level, subsequently receiving 2 humblings. Everton at the Bramley Moor Dock, and Arsenal at home. That wrapped up the midway point of the campaign, with Crewe Alexandra barely avoiding the drop. Now, there's still another 19 games to go, and a few issues became apparent on both sides of the pitch. Also, our midfield could be improved, especially with Camara leaving the club and Bayless dying in about a month. Thankfully, the board kindly increased our budget to a shy under 22 million. I didn't think it'd happen this soon, but it was time to go to South America.
I gotta tell you, it was perfect.
To the disgust of every single River Plate supporter, 2 of their hottest prospects were moving from Buenos Aires to a place they probably never heard of. Defensive midfielder Agustin Ruffini joined, just to get injured a few weeks later. Alongside would be Tomas Roldan. The beautiful Argentine looked good on paper, but with these 2 joining for a combined 22.5 million, if we avoid relegation, will the pair turn out better than what happened with West Ham over 2 decades prior? To round up our South American shopping, Edwin Mafia joined from Atletico Nacional. Lastly, I bought a backup keeper from Fulham named Eli Harrison. 2 of the signees would get their debut in the FA Cup at Rotherham, where Roldan scored. A sign of things to come. In their Premier League debuts, we went to the Amex to meet Emre Belözoğlu's men. The experience was odd, as the normally dominant Seagulls were vapid. After earning a penalty, Ho Young-min broke the deadlock. Moments later, our Argentine was found. Roldan! It turned out to be simple, with all our new signings making an appearance. To continue our climb out of the trash, we hosted Manchester United. Points-wise, they've been similar to last season, and that was showcased in our match. 5 goals were scored by us. Now, 2 of them were in our own net. Thankfully, Ashley Phillips in the 79th and Olale in the 85th gave us a 3-2 win. Despite Lampard's Reds being a clown show, they actually went on to win the Carabao Cup in pens and the FA Cup. That led to these headlines. Lampard leads Man United to glory! 2 Lampard on the verge of the sack. Fickle world. Unfortunately, the aftermath of defeating United saw our star Olale suffer a brutal 2-month injury. With Roldan still adapting to life at the Crewe and Eriugo at AFCON, we ran into a difficult FA Cup encounter with Chelsea. Not like that matters since we gave up 2 goals in the opening 10 and were down by 3 by the half. Kim Min-ho was especially poor, and having 3 center backs wasn't going to be smart if we wanted to survive. So on deadline day, I attempted some loans. First was Bastien Mepio of Porto. However, his deal was taking ages to resolve. To be safe, I went for some other guys. Emin Cospo of Barcelona. Only for him to reject me, despite it saying he would be interested. Then I reluctantly went to our former affiliate club and asked for Daniel Flood. They accepted, and approaching the final few hours, he agreed to join. But the French lad was on the table, and I'd prefer him. So I rejected Flood and waited. The deadline passed. How did this deal not go through? I put this offer before deadline day began. Plus, I sold Harrison Parker to Derby, so this was a complete disaster. So was Southampton, who defeated us after Harrison's poor game, and Brentford beat us at our house. A 2-0 lead versus last place Norwich? Well, the returning Clausen was having a stinker, and Joe Reed allowed Ouattara free by not doing his #1 job. Marking! A 2-2 draw, which we were lucky wasn't a loss. Luckily, we had a 5-point gap from relegation, but with a difficult set of matches upcoming, we could drop further down. Now, imagine this world. Mauricio Pochettino is still Chelsea manager.
I am not a clown.
You might think that Chelsea have been relegated, but they've actually finished in the top 4 for the previous 4 seasons. They were competing with City for the title, but the citizens were starting to become too strong. Yet their young squad had turned out well and actually extended past their initial 8-year contracts. Along with them, they had Benjamin Šeško, who became a danger man, Karim Adeyemi, who maintained his speed, along with Gilles Rest in goal. Our plan against Chelsea would be parking the bus. It was the first time I went defensive this year, and it was working. They kept missing and got frustrated. Unfortunately, a top team versus a mediocre defense will eventually lead to a goal. Šeško found enough space, and he nearly doubled it 2 minutes later. Fast forward to the final 20, and I brought on Roldan. It seemed like a steep task for an 18-year-old Argentine, but with an innocuous ball from Moulin not being dealt with, the kid would equalize. Our approach went from sitting back to standing up to them. Stamford Bridge had a sigh of relief when we hit the bar in the 90th, but the nerves wouldn't go away. I should have probably went off balance. I probably should have went back to defensive, but we've been creating chances. Roldan! Roldan! You have one man in support! Oh, Roldan! 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 Let's go! Roldan! Batigol-esque, we defeated Chelsea in stunning fashion. That followed up with a routine 2-0 win over Leeds. While Roldan didn't get a goal contribution, he was doing the right things, just not against Forest. But the returning Eriugo was able to find the sole strike. 3 wins on the bounce led to Liverpool. However, they weren't having a great campaign, seeing Luis Enrique sacked. That led to Barry Lutas becoming the interim manager. Despite starting strong, things went downhill by March. Against us, they couldn't hit the net to save their lives, as we escaped with a scoreless draw. This unbeaten sequence grew our gap from the drop by 10, with 37 points seemingly being the relegation benchmark. One more win may be enough to get rid of our worries. Conveniently, we faced Spurs, who were recently eliminated from the Champions League. They, along with United, were disastrous domestically. Diego Simeone won their first trophy last year, and the future seemed bright. It's the hope that kills you. It looked ugly for them, especially with our guy Olale back. Spurs still had a threat, and his name was Saka, Friedrich Saka, who hit the post, but was offside. Fast forwarding to the second half, Spurs became desperate for an equalizer, although their defensive shape led to a 3-on-3 counter-attack, which they wasted as we countered the counter, heading the other way as the ball ended up at Ho Young-min, and like his idol Son Heung-min, he'd score at the Tottenham Stadium. A 2-0 victory, passing them in the table. This all but guaranteed our safety from relegation before the international break. After getting pranked by my medical staff on April 1st, we did lose to Manchester City and their billion-pound squad. they wouldn't be blue billion pound bottle drops, as they ended the season on 97 points, with Haaland tallying 38 times. Thank goodness Sheikh Mansour is downscaling their funding. In our final 8 matches, there was a wide range of results. Snorefests like Aston Villa, losing to a deflected long shot against Blackburn, Kai Havertz destroying me, and losing a 3-1 lead to Everton in the 93rd minute. However, we also came back from 2-0 down to Newcastle thanks to Olale and kept 3 clean sheets, including the destruction of Derby County. Ashley Phillips grew as a player and impressed in the back line, Moulin became comfortable in his role, and other youngsters began to settle well. Plus, Olale won PFA Young Player of the Year. An 11th place finish is more than I asked for, but if you believe the stat nerds, it could have been higher. Some improvements are required, but I'd hope to be Conference League dreaming soon. By the way, how is Ryan Dicker doing?
Sacked in the morning!